All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host, Ben, and this is going to be a week 29-ish review show. It's going to focus, there was only a little EPL action, and this is a little late because I was away for a little bit, and then all of a sudden we turn around and I thought it was just going to be kind of a friendly international window, and I entirely forgot the U.S. had its Nations League, so I'm going to spend a little time actually in the beginning speaking a little bit about that, both the game versus Jamaica, and of course Mexico. But mostly, instead of kind of doing a kind of a detailed version of both, we're going to basically look at a broad picture. What should we think of this? Were there some things that we saw that were maybe different? As far as like analyzing what Berhalter has done, he seems to basically get the better of Mexico in at every one of these Nations League games. But that's not really. That's kind of where the issue with I guess Greg comes from. It's usually not this. It's not in Concacaf where we've struggled with him. And are there some things that we have maybe been able to learn through a couple of these games that now that he's been back, he's only really had a couple of international windows. Some haven't necessarily been terrific. There's that one half for Germany that was okay, and then we got completely destroyed. Friendly and whatnot, and then we turned around and had a really good game actually versus Ghana. To be fair, Ghana were just really dreadful from what I remember, and then we had that weird kind of stretch where we were able to beat Trinidad and Tobago in a kind of a semifinal to get into Copa America, or at least to qualify officially. And it took us until I think like the 85th minute or so before we even got the first goal. It was a very sluggy kind of game. I think Pepe actually was the one that ended up saving Berhalter again, and that's been a bit of a theme for Ricardo Pepe as well. He just seems to kind of turn up at the best times for Greg to kind of save him, and all he's rewarded is basically getting benched every other window. And then one thing that I didn't actually say is the last time like this they had that little window is the very next game within like 20 minutes or so. So Gino Dest just completely lost his head and got picked up a very stupid red card. And so we weren't really able to experiment the way that because we had like a 3-0 lead going into like the second leg, and we weren't really able to basically we had to kind of batten down the hatches when that could have been a really good time to maybe experiment a little bit, maybe try Pepe and Balogun kind of together, maybe try some different things, and we weren't really able to do it. And because of that red card, we weren't able to use Dest for Jamaica, and so that kind of changed some things as well. We saw something very interesting in that second half. We saw Weston McKennie actually played at right back. So that was a little different. We tried Joe Scally in the beginning, and that unfortunately for Scally that did not work out at all for him. And he's maybe gotten the drawn the lowest straw. I guess we can say because given where we were a year ago, Scally was quite good versus Canada, but Scally was maybe kind of looked at maybe as a little bit of a scapegoat versus Germany. He didn't have his best game versus Germany, and then here versus Jamaica, basically like 30 seconds into the game, they reconceded off a corner kick, or reconceded off basically just kind of a looped in cross after basically a throw in. And because it happened 30 seconds into the game, I think just everyone just kind of was taken by surprise. But we were not necessarily that great, and it was interesting to see the change that Berhalter made, which I'll get into that a little bit later. But kind of leading off, we did have a shortened EPL fixture list. Big storylines really in the relegation race. It was Brentford versus Burnley, and then Luton playing Forest, and then the top four also kind of kicked off between Aston Villa and Tottenham, both having to kick off on the weekend. And Luton basically played two games in the past week, or I guess going back 2 weeks, including one of the more wild games of the season. Basically, 3-4 game versus Bournemouth. They had a 3-goal lead. So it's not it doesn't the result is not what they wanted or performance wise, given how they played in the second half. Really, a 7 goal thriller coming at Luton's expense. And the one thing you can say is how would this kind of result would it lead to other losses down the road? Because this would be something to really shake your confidence. So how would Rob Edwards be able to get his team to respond? Essentially, how would they respond versus a Nottingham Forest side that is They can't really afford to lose a game versus, quote unquote relegation competitors or contenders as well. And so basically, this was a must-win 3-point game for both sides. So you usually those actually do end up in a bit of a stalemate, and that is what we got. But it didn't come easy for either team. So we'll talk into that, and then with FA Cup action, I'll have to address it. Man United do get it done over Liverpool. An up and down game. It could have gone either way. To be honest, now the way it started, actually, I thought Man United were quite dominant in that first half, but Liverpool somehow were able to end that half, basically having that 2-1 lead. Looks like that was actually going to be enough. I think it went to maybe the 85th minute or so, and then lo and behold, someone that I just was not expecting to be the hero for Man United was Anthony. And Anthony did something that, again, not only would you not expect him to be the hero, he's the hero because he used his right foot. He did a really nice turn and had a quick shot with his right foot, and that surprised Kelleher to go in, make it 2-2. And then Liverpool again got the lead in extra time. I think it was Harvey Elliott with a bit of a deflected goal. So some luck involved. Uh, and then it looked like maybe that was going to be enough. And then lo and behold, again, basically our own fault or Liverpool's own fault. I think Darwin Núñez plays just a really poor pass, and I'll get into what happened in a little more detail as the show advances. But Núñez kind of had his bad pass. I think he's either trying to thread something in, or basically he just has his head down and he's just trying to get the ball out of his feet. Either way, it was a bit weird. He was on the left side, a bit weird. He was kind of playing a little deeper. You'd prefer him with his legs to maybe be a little higher upfield. And Cody Gakpo came on, and basically they ended up kind of switching spots. You would have assumed Gakpo would be playing on the left, and Nunez would be played through the middle. This was also happened when Salah came off. He had a minutes restriction. It was weird how Jurgen Klopp played Salah for all the 90 minutes and kind of a dead rubber kind of game versus in the second half of the Champions or the Europa game, when they already had basically like a 4 goal lead, and then they scored like 5 goals in the first, I don't know, 12 minutes or so. So that was kind of not the best game plan, a game situation by Klopp. And the weird thing about that is, I think Liverpool won like 5-1 again. It was or maybe it was 6. I think they had like 11 goal aggregate. But honestly, it could have just been 10 in that one game. And what happened in that second half was lots of blown and missed chances. And again, it's something that we saw versus Man City, and it's something that we've seen in a number of games. There was a game versus Brighton when we saw something very similar, and it's just again, it's those games when you don't have someone like Diego Jota to take a chance. Basically, it's when I do kind of fear a little bit. And you took off Salah, so the front line was Nunez, Gakpo, and Elliott. And I do like Elliott. I have kind of mentioned that before. I don't want to necessarily kind of bash him a little bit, but it's just Elliott had a couple of times when Liverpool had a number of chances in that second half to do better than what they did. I think one was even a 5-on-2, and it would come into people's feet, and they didn't want to shoot it, or didn't want to take it on with their weaker foot, I guess you can say. And that ended up showing up. Basically, the difference really in the game to me was Anthony took the shot on his weaker foot. He just decided to, what the hell, and Elliot didn't. But to be fair, Elliot did get the goal in extra time to give Liverpool a 3-2 lead, and they still kind of blew it away. And then at the very end, Man United, Liverpool have a corner kick, and Man United basically score on the corner kick. So not it wasn't necessarily the happiest. I had waited a little time to talk about this, to collect my thoughts. And I'm actually a little worried because it has been such a long time. I'm probably going to forget a whole lot, but I'll try to do my best. And then Man City make it easy versus Newcastle. It was basically, and we could see maybe a final of last year, which was the Manchester Derby, and both Manchester clubs do advance in the FA Cup as well. And then, before the Liverpool and Man United, 7 goal kind of fun, Chelsea made things interesting versus Leicester. Chelsea got up to an early 2 goal lead. Looked like things were going to be comfortable. Leicester really didn't have any kind of kick in that first half, and then you turn around, and I think it's Diazy just has a poor pass back, just kind of loses his head a little bit. I think it's a throw in, and he just does it blindly, and basically kicks it into his own net from like I don't know 30 yards or 30 yards out. The goalkeeper is also completely off his line, and he's just not prepared for this. So just a little miscommunication, and it allowed Leicester to get back into the game. And then a couple minutes after that, Leicester actually tie it with a beautiful goal, maybe goal of the weekend, to be honest, by someone. I have his name down kind of later on, and I have forgot it, but it is a very very nice goal. It's one he does a the player on the left does a couple of nice really nice step overs, and then basically curls it into far net. At a 2-2, you just didn't know what the game was going to be, and then Chelsea got a little bailed out a little bit. They were able to, I think it's Cole Palmer or someone does it might be Jackson. Someone is really clever to be able to get in behind, and Chelsea had it felt like they had lost control a little bit in this game, but I think it was a little that Cole Palmer and Jackson kind of connection were able to feed him in behind, and basically he's taken out from behind. And at first it was rewarded as a penalty, but and only a yellow. But apparently there's some kind of double jeopardy rule that exists. I can't really explain it. So they because it happened outside the box, it wasn't a penalty, but it was a sending off. Uh, I can't really complain because it probably is a goal scoring opportunity. I think it is the last man back. He's going for the ball, but he doesn't really get it. So I understand it. It's probably the right call. And Chelsea really needed that because I thought they were kind of a little bit on the ropes at that point, but it doesn't matter because they are able to win it. Cole Palmer, I think, at the very Charlie Chukwuemeka wins it at the end for them, a sub, and also it's a really nice play by Cole Palmer. He does a little nice little back heel to kind of play Chukwuemeka in, and it was really nice to see. A really nice moment for him because he's been one of those players that has been out pretty much the entire year as well. Chelsea just kind of had that with had to deal that with like everyone it seems. Uh, and good a good moment for him and Chelsea are able to advance and they still have a chance to get back to Wembley and to play in another final. I think they can. The winner of the FA Cup, I think, does get into Europe. So Chelsea still have a lot to play for and still really go for this. And then, lo and behold, Coventry City is going to be the fourth team to make Wembley in a semifinal, and they continue their dream. They were unlucky last year not to win promotion versus Luton Town. They got all the way to the playoff final, and they lost striker Victor Gilkeresh, who a Swedish striker who has been absolutely killing it in Portugal for Sporting Lisbon. And frankly, there's going to be a lot of talk about Victor Osimhen. Like who are these top clubs going to look at for a striker? You're going to hear Victor Osimhen. You're going to hear Ivan Toney. I think Victor Gilkeresh will get some buzz, but that'll be later on in the summer. Um, but Coventry have been able to kind of stem that tide a little bit. They basically recruited Ellis Sims from Everton, and they brought in American Haji Wright. And Haji Wright, lo and behold, is able to get the game winner for them over Wolves, over the EPL side to advance into the semifinals, and pretty awesome to see. You want them to at least get something out of the season because they are, I think, outside the playoff spot at the moment, but it's only a couple points away. But 10 or so, I don't know how many games actually is left because they have more than the EPL. They play every single week. So a number of games left. We'll see what they're able to do if they were able to kind of sneak back into the playoff and maybe given how they were able to make the final last season, maybe they can they have a special season lined up for them still as well. But if nothing else, they can enjoy a trip to Wembley and enjoy Haji Wright. Kind of helping them get there. And so that's it. So that's kind of leading off to where we're at, and then I will get started with the Nations League. And so the first game versus Jamaica it was a near disaster, but they do go on to win 3-1. I guess we'll stick with the positives first, then before the negatives, or I guess yeah. So I mean, they conceded within the first like 20 seconds, and again, it's one of those situations where. I think they just I think it just caught them by surprise a little bit, but at the same time, you can't really get beat in the back post 30 seconds into the game. It's just kind of again, it comes from a throw in. I think a ball is just kind of looped in, and Scally is beaten, and and Ryan is kind of beaten, and so that's kind of where we're at. And then let's see, it took us a while to make it. I said it was 3-1. If we got down to like the last like 30 seconds in stoppage time, maybe even less than that, to get that equalizer, we were able to get a little bit of a corner at the very end. And Miles Robinson, I think, has a little flick on header, and that basically bounces off one of the Jamaican defenders. They were playing in a shell the entire time. They got the early goal lead and basically played 10 men behind the ball with just one striker, to make some runs. And even then, that one striker, I think his name was Cephas, was in behind a couple of times and really did need Matt Turner, not Matt Ryan. Really did need Matt Turner to be able to make a couple saves, or if nothing else, we needed the Jamaican guy to basically fluff his lines a couple of times. It was a bit of a helter skelter game. It was not pretty, to say the least. But we did come alive in extra time. So Giorena with two lovely assists. He didn't start the game. Came on at halftime. It was interesting to see Giorena come on for Joe Scally, and seeing this, I was like, because normally Greg Berhalter, usually almost all the time, what he'll do is he'll do like for like. Basically, he doesn't really like subbing out a player. He'll sub out a position, essentially. So usually it's Gio Reyna for a Tillman, essentially. Billy Tillman got the start over Reyna. Usually it'll be if Ricardo Pepe or if Balogun's playing, it'll be like for like, striker for striker. Here we saw something different. We saw him keep Tillman on and move Gio Reyna onto the field, and basically he moved Reston McKennie to be back at fullback. So little tweak, and it wasn't necessarily terrific. I mean, it's not necessarily like Jamaica actually looked threatening down that side, so that was effective. I did feel like we were maybe losing what McKennie can offer as far as making some runs into the box. But that said, he's got a really good delivery, and if nothing else, I think this does give us a little bit of an option. If say a Serginho Dest can't necessarily go, if maybe Berhalter doesn't want to use Scally. So I liked the idea. Apparently, Weston McKennie's been playing a little bit more further wide in for Juventus that I've read. So, and he does have a really good delivery on him. And I've kind of always wondered, could Weah maybe kind of be this kind of idea? And instead, they tried it with McKennie. So I didn't necessarily hate it. So at least we see that. And I did mention it ends 3-1, and that's because of Janeway with two lovely assists, and both to Haji Wright. Haji Wright was also a sub in the second half. It didn't really show up until extra time, but he did make some good runs, and he had some pretty good nice finishes. So good to necessarily good to see. And again, he basically came a couple of days after getting his side in that club team into the semifinal. So and he was rewarded. He was rewarded with basically getting the start versus Mexico. And then so the second game versus Mexico, uh, we basically win 2-0, dos a zero, as they say. And a note I had here is I feel like it is the easiest that the U.S. has basically had versus Mexico since I can remember, and that'll be when I get to Mexico. That'll be kind of the main thing that I harp on a little bit. I mean, we made them look poor, to be fair, but I'm used to even they mentioned something how Berhalter's record versus Mexico has been impeccable. And maybe he has a draw in there, but he mostly has beaten them. And just going back a few years now, yeah, maybe even five years in a row now, we've been able to go without a loss. But even in those games, even in games we won by multiple goals, games were in the balance. It required us to, our keeper to make some big saves, or it required them to basically miss chances. But as far as possession, where the ball was, I thought it was relatively even through the most of those games. This was the first time where you just looked, and Mexico did not have any kind of quality on the ball at all. It really was stark. They ended with something like 99 passes completed just for the first half. They were not able to play through us. It felt like anytime we were able to put any kind of body near them, they were giving it up like for fun. It did not look like a coordinated side, and I've been one of those to kind of dismiss Mexico kind of falling out, because there has been talk a little bit online about that. And I can't I can't necessarily defend that now because they did look rough, and it is worth saying before they even got here, uh, they struggled to actually qualify a little bit for Copa America. I think the first game they played was Honduras. They lost 2-0, and then they turned around and I think won like 3-0. And then they won the semifinal game relatively comfortably as well. But at least here they looked rough. And it is worth saying that Mexico did win the Gold Cup last year. I think they beat Panama kind of comfortably, but it was a little stark. And I think the funny thing about it was the afterwards, the coach made some comments being that noted how the U.S. now has a bunch of players in Europe now, as opposed to Mexico kind of has is referring a little bit more to their domestic league. But one of the players that is in Europe and that relatively is having a decent year is Santi Gimenez, and a striker for them. And it was very weird how not only did he not get a start, but once he came on, he actually gave Mexico a little life, and, if not for, he tried to buy, basically a foul/dive, basically a couple minutes after coming on, and then he nearly, fooled the ref into giving him a PK. And so, 2-1 with, 15 minutes to go, that could have made things a little more interesting, and Mexico didn't really have any kind of identity, any kind of way to play until Gimenez, came on, so I thought that was a little interesting. But as far as, why do we win 2-0? We get the first goal from Tyler Adams, and wow, was this a strike? A strike from a player that you just would not have expected it from, and really it came from a player that did not, funny enough, have his best game. If not for this, I don't really want to know what his kind of foot mob or sofa score kind of rating would have been because it wouldn't have necessarily been good. He now given it back, he has taken a while to finally recover. He's only had maybe 20 minutes with Bournemouth, if that. So to say he's rusty would be an understatement. Also, before this, he got a couple of minutes to play versus Jamaica, and when he was he came on as a second half bench sub, and in extra time he was taken off as well. So he was taken off as a sub. And, he actually, showed some frustration, with Berhalter after that. So there was a little controversy coming in, with that in mind, and, at least with that strike, he kind of, changed the conversation entirely, because he's not really known for doing this. He hits this from 30 yards out or so, just, arrows it into the net, and, it came from absolutely nothing. We were not necessarily great, in that half. I think we had maybe 4 shots total, with maybe that being the only one on target. Now, we did dominate. I think we had 60% of the ball. But one of the weird things was, we weren't really able to do a whole lot with it. I think they said out of our front 3 attackers, which was Pulisic, Haji Wright, and Weah, only Pulisic had maybe more than 11 touches. So not we weren't really able to get anyone, especially Weah. Weah was hardly able to get on the ball at all. And our buildup wasn't necessarily great. Really, the only times that Mexico was able to get any kind of a threat against us was our own doing. We were a couple lazy passes. Either maybe Tyler Adams was caught from behind, or I think there were a couple times when Chris Richards maybe had a poor pass that nearly led to some danger moments. But Tim Ream was able to help him out and snuff those out. And I think the only other chance they had came off a throw-in. Similar to actually with Jamaica, we weren't really switched on, and they were able to get a shot off. And thankfully, it was right at Turner. So that was at halftime. We were dominating, but at the same time, it didn't. The CBS crew basically asked, I think it was Jesse Marsh or someone, and they said, I wouldn't really change anything if I'm Mexico because for the most part, the game plan was probably working. And I think they were right. We weren't necessarily, we were not, we had, majority of the ball, but we didn't really threaten them that much. And, outside of a Tyler Adams screamer, which you don't really expect to get every single game, that's probably what you would expect, especially when you've played as bad of a game as possible. And it's only 1-0 and it was kind of a freak goal. But the second half, was not that case. We were much better in the second half, and we were able to get the second one with Gio Reyna. And man, it did take a while for them to draw first blood, but after that, it felt like it was one of those where maybe it could actually be a high number, and unfortunately we kind of lost composure after that. But basically. we were able to get Weston McKennie and Weah significantly more involved. It looked like it was once Tyler Adams came off, it was Johnny Cardoza came on instead, and it seemed he was a little bit more comfortable receiving the ball a little bit. He was making better runs, kind of open things up for others, and I think we definitely benefited from that. And then another thing that happened was not only were we attacking a little bit more down the right side, but it just felt we were getting more touches to our attackers, and we're rewarded a little bit with what we were able to do. With I think Giorena maybe is able to draw a foul, and then we take a free kick kind of early, and then Christian Pulisic is able to beat a defender to get to with a really nice clever flick or touch to get to the byline, and then he has a kind of a cutback cross. That's kind of defended away, but they're not. Mexico's not really able to clear it, and then Giorena is there with a bit of a early strike, and it's a very skilled volley. It is not easy to control, very not easy to get power on this. Easily could have hit this high or kind of hit this out of bounds, and he's able to do kind of slide it in to the near post. And man, what a story it has been for Reina, because anytime I've done a U.S. game where basically Reina has played or featured, I felt like he's basically been, if not our best player, at least one of. He's been someone that I've always been taking notes and highlighting, and it's just funny how looking back, this is the guy that we weren't really featuring in Qatar. Just one of the few that just kind of seems to understand where the ball is in the box. Someone that can that has a finish on them. I think he scored versus Ghana as well. Someone that's comfortable on the ball. Someone that in this game he showcased a little more of a different role. That was another thing that was the CBS crew was highlighting was he wasn't playing his usual kind of central attacking midfielder. The cam kind of role. He was a little bit more in the they called it a pivot, but he was more of kind of a central midfielder. It was kind of next to Tyler Adams or him next to uh, Johnny Cardoza, and so that required you to do a little bit more defensive work and to basically be a little bit more of a holder, not necessarily to leave your space a lot. And I don't think he necessarily had a bad job doing that either. And one thing I want to add on to that is the way Nottingham Forest play. They basically do a 4-2-3-1 every single game, and they have Nuno likes playing Morgan Gibbs White in that little 10 spot, which would be basically Reyna's. Now, Reyna's not going to play over Morgan Gibbs White. That's just not going to happen. The one thing you could do is you could play Gibbs White maybe on the right side, or maybe on one of the attacking sides, maybe on the left. But he'd also Nuno has Hudson Odoi and Alenga, so basically, or he's been playing Origi on one of those spots. So it does limit where Gio Reyna can play. Now, if he can play in one of these pivot roles, you've got someone like a Ryan Yates or a Dominguez or even a Danilo that have not necessarily proven that they should be reliable, that their spot is theirs. They don't have Oriel Mangala there anymore, and I think this could be a role that Giovanna could slot in if Nuno gives him the opportunity. So we'll see, because he's very good with his ball retention. He's one, he can get the ball, he can turn on it and not lose it. He's not afraid of it. He'll call for it. He can win some duels. He's got good physical presence to him. He's 6'1", I think. So if nothing else, that's at least something to maybe think about as well. And so we get a 2-0, and again, when it maybe should have ended a little bit more comfortable after that, it wasn't. We had to wait on a little bit, but that was pretty much it. We other than a couple scares after Gimenez came on, I thought both of their fullbacks got cheap yellows by just losing the ball. It was relatively easy for us to get behind them. In that second half, I thought I didn't think they necessarily turned us over that much. And until they really did push, they started pressing us and started to get us a little bit more into to rushing some things. We're also playing with a lead, so it's different. But they were rough. They didn't seem to have any kind of ball retention, clever, quick passes. They didn't really have an ability to pass around us or make us chase the ball. They didn't really have any pace until Gimenez came on. So, and they didn't really have any threat into the box. Henry Martin, there was like maybe one time they were able to get him a touch in the box, and he just absolutely fluffed it. So that was rough for them. And so for the U.S., Greg Berhalter has 9 lives. And now I'll try to be kind of impartial and fair and say, had they lost the game to Jamaica, given how they looked in the second half, I would have tried to be reasonable and to try to explain it away. Given how we did try some changes and we were good, it just wasn't necessarily coming off. Uh, it was interesting to see him, bring Ray on to start in the second half. It was Jamaica's C team though. They have a lot of people injured. Mikhail Antonio left the camp early, but I did like the changes. I liked McKinney at the right back. I liked that idea. There was no Dest because of the red card, as mentioned. It almost looked like he moved Pulisic to right wing to bring on Haji Wright, so that was different. Like he didn't just bring on Haji Wright to take off Balogun. Balogun played most of that second half as well, and then when Balogun went off, I think Pepe came on. Berhalter was actually going for this. He was trying something new. Was able to get Tyler Adams some minutes as well. I didn't really think Musa played a poor game either, and it was interesting to see how maybe Musa was kind of the one that was maybe I want to say given like the back shoulder a little bit because we didn't necessarily see him versus Mexico. I think Yunus Musa makes if I'm doing an 11, I think he makes my main my starting my starting midfield. And you have in Qatar, it was Musa, Adams, and McKinney every single game, and we were as good as a team out of possession as really there was in that World Cup, and stats back that out. We weren't always the best at playing through lines and always finding able to create playing in the pockets, being able to get things to attackers, and that's where Giorena comes in. And so the question for Berhalter now, and I am slightly worried a little bit about this because we do have a couple friendlies before Copa, so hopefully we'll be able to hopefully Reina will will not have any kind of knocks and be able to feature in some of those friendlies because I think we need to experiment a little bit with this midfield. Who is going to work best? Coming off the bench, maybe that can be a McKinney role. Uh, or maybe Tyler Adams should take a backseat to Johnny Cardoza. All I know is I want Yunus Musa and I want Giorena to basically be the first two on the list when it comes to the midfield. Uh, I think Musa is severely underrated when it comes to just the ball retention. He doesn't make mistakes with it, and he takes risk. He's very good at running with the ball, carrying it. He's very good at winning it back. He's a dual monster. Uh, Also, he doesn't. He's not a bad passer, and he's just one thing that I've noticed is when Tyler Adams was at his best, it was basically when Yunus Musa was kind of next to him, and Tyler Adams would have like an easy pass to Musa, and then Musa would be the one to kind of advance the ball a little bit. I thought Tyler Adams was struggling a little bit in the game versus Mexico. He didn't really have that. He had Giorena, and maybe they just haven't played enough together to have that kind of chemistry. But I thought that was the thing that kind of came to my mind. Uh, at least in the Jamaica game, it was very interesting to see Tillman get the start over Reyna. It didn't necessarily work, but he didn't take Tillman off. He allowed Tillman and Reyna to play together. So I like that. There were it basically seemed like he found ways to get as many offensive minded people as possible in a game. We needed a goal when we were dominating possession, dominating the ball around their penalty area. And yeah, we conceded a sloppy goal. But and it took a while for us to get the equalizer. But given how the game actually played, you did feel it was deserved. And so, and the equalizer was his own goal. But it doesn't necessarily matter because able to advance, played well in extra time, and then really did dominate Mexico. And so, though Mexico did play a role there. So as far as pros, I think before the game. I was trying to think. I didn't think Berhalter made a mistake with the call up for like the first time ever. There was maybe some shouts for some like a sergeant that was kind of missed out. But it was very very minimal. Maybe people were upset about Richards maybe getting not Richards Miles Robinson getting called up. But that was really it. And the Nations League roster has basically been our A roster over the years. It seems like what we've done is we've decided to give the domestic, the MLS guys, or I guess our B team, maybe the Olympic squad, kind of a run at it in Gold Cup, and we've been able to win with the Gold Cup roster. The Nations League has really been our main kind of European kind of go-to players. This will be the team that we see in Copa, and for the most part, I didn't have issues. I think that's at least an improvement. There have been usually when Greg's done this, I've had many of issues. There's at least some of that. Again, had this not necessarily worked out, I think maybe you could have attacked Berhalter for not starting Gio Reyna. But at the same time, he hasn't really gotten a lot of minutes in his legs either. You didn't necessarily know if he was on a minutes restriction, and frankly, if he was on a minutes restriction, I would have preferred him in the second half to have 45 minutes than necessarily the first. So there are a couple of ways I could have explained that. So anyways, I don't have to because they were able to get through Jamaica's C team, and then able to beat Mexico. And so as far as positives, uh, Gio, Tyler, and Haji, right? And basically two players that did have the most controversy coming in with their selection. There was a lot of talk actually about that. I think Jesse Marsh was wondering why Gio Reyna was even picked. He hasn't been playing, for his club team, things like that. But you just see the quality that he shows. There's a saying that form is temporary, class is permanent. And, you can sometimes you can just see. Sometimes it only takes, a couple of clips, couple of minutes to see someone receiving the ball, someone recognizing where they are, someone that's receiving the ball when someone's basically on him, when there's pressure on them, to see how they do. And you see it instantly with Gio Reyna that he understands what he wants to do with the ball, and he's not afraid of it. And so that to me is we don't really have a ton of that in the team, to be honest. Jonas Musa is another one, that is like that. So I want to see a little bit more of that. In this game, I thought Tyler Adams was actually a little was hiding a little bit. I thought Weston McKennie was hiding versus Mexico. So there are ways to kind of go around that, and then at the same time, because Adams is able to show that he is back fit. That was another thing too. Didn't really want Adams to to finally get some games at some minutes after being out for so long with that injury, and to do something to the point where he wouldn't have been able to feature in the summer. So it'll be interesting to see how Bournemouth handles Tyler Adams down the stretch as well. But I mean, what a moment for him to have that kind of goal. Came from a player that you just don't expect to have that in his locker, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more of him because I do miss him, and he's never really been the most physically dominating kind of defensive midfielder, but what he has been has he doesn't lose the ball usually. He was sloppy in this game, uh, but he's always been one of the better pressers, and he just covers probably the most ground when we play in that midfield. And we just the way Berhalter plays, you usually we have the fullbacks higher up. We ask our defenders to play in a bit of a high line. You need to be able to cover a lot of ground, and he's going to be needed, whether or not off the bench or not. And the thing that's I think positive to say is I can say that now with. I really am starting to believe in Johnny Cardoza, and that'll be another player too. When we do get to friendlies, I'm going to want to see more of him. So hopefully we'll be able to. Apparently he's been playing in La Liga. I didn't even know that for like Real Betis, and been playing well. And I haven't seen any Betis games, but the cameos that I've seen at least here, I've liked what I've seen. And so and with again with Gio Reyna, I all he's I mentioned how it's good that he passes the eye test. Really good at threading those passes in between the lines. Very good at looking for the ball. He seems to just recognize how to advance the ball forward. He's an attack minded player, but also doesn't hurt you as far as losing the ball. When someone's pressing him, he can shield you. He can turn. So a lot of qualities that you want in a midfielder, and then he's offering end product. So he gets 2 assists against Jamaica, and then gets a goal in the final. So there are a lot of skeptics that were out there. I think it's time to admit defeat. If fit, he should be starting for us in Copa. And unfortunately, I have to include that caveat, if fit, because like Tyler Adams, Gio Reyna, that has been his bugaboo a little bit. So maybe it could benefit us that he's not actually playing a ton for Nottingham Forest because he won't get injured. And with Haji Wright, it was interesting to see him get the start for versus Mexico. And I get it. I get rewarding the player for for what he did in to help beat Jamaica. They wouldn't have done it without his goals. But at the same time, I kind of think if if we are going into a tournament, the player that I really want to get the most minutes out of is to me is Balogun, Florian Balogun, and yeah, I do think it's interesting how back in Qatar, Haji Wright actually got picked to play or got to pick to make the team over Pepe. And it is funny how even, a couple years later down the road, it happens again, essentially, that Wright was picked over Pepe, and, Wright is doing some good things for Coventry City. I do like the fact that he's playing his craft, outside the country, and, you can't really fault what he did versus Jamaica, but at the same he was struggling to get involved a little bit for first Mexico. Not really his fault. I think he really didn't benefit by Gio Reyna not necessarily, being able uh, to get the ball to him enough. Like one of the issues when you're playing Rain a little bit further back in midfield, like I said, that pivot situation is usually that player is trying to progress the ball to someone else to then be the final third kind of playmaker, as opposed to Jay Reyna kind of being in that role. He was on the opposite end, and I think someone like Haji Wright maybe suffered a little bit from that, and really the whole team kind of suffered. I mentioned how we didn't have an ability to get any of those attackers involved, at least in that first half. And so, where are the concerns? Tillman got the start versus Jamaica. Didn't feel like he took his opportunity. Scally either as well. Um, McKinney at right back was an interesting tweak, but I don't necessarily know if they're actually starting. The game versus Colombia. I don't necessarily know if I want to see that. Um, I already mentioned how what happened versus Mexico. We did struggle. We struggled to combine passes to play, to get guys upfield involved. The midfield was not combining well. Again, Gio playing deeper was not something we were used to seeing, and yeah, it seemed like it was by design. It seemed, and it wasn't necessarily working. And the only negative was again we didn't really have someone in possession to feed in, right away or Pulisic, and that's kind of a reason too where. Going forward, someone like a Balogun would have done better to drop into midfield to be a number to help give a different kind of passing lane or a different kind of option. And I think we're kind of missing that too. I think Haji Ray was trying to just kind of look for the ball to kind of find him as opposed to someone kind of looking for it themselves. And you can do that because you're always going to have that outlet over the top with the way that we play Anthony Robinson. You always have to worry about that kind of threat. So you can manipulate who can come look for the ball as well, just as long as you don't have everyone doing it. So I think we struggled a little bit with that, and I mentioned how that Ghana game. Uh, One thing that I saw, at least one thing that I remember taking notes was Balogun's really really good at doing that. Dropping in, maybe combining doing a flick to do it yeah, give and go to drop in. Maybe he passes it to Dest, and then Dest can play in Tim Weah, things like that. But another thing he's really good at doing is he'll drop in to kind of be a number, and then after he lays something off, he'll immediately spin and make a sprint. He's really good at doing that, and he's got such great pace for that as well. And he's not just looking to just kind of wait on the shoulder for something hit over the top. He'll use that pace in other ways. And I just think I don't necessarily think we used that. We utilized that enough in either the Jamaica game or in this one. And so that was maybe a bit of a negative. I thought Mexico was targeting Chris Richards to kind of be the guy to beat them on the ball. That was Tim Ream's composure next to him, I think, did help. And Tim Ream did work versus Mexico, but he doesn't really have Mexico didn't really have any pace in their attack. I do kind of worry a little bit about Tim Ream if he's caught up for the likes versus Colombia, someone like a Luis Diaz or who else they have. I think they're playing James Rodriguez still, but it, we've seen it with Fulham that he doesn't really have the legs anymore to when you're playing in a high line, and usually we are a team that presses high. And so when we press with our front players, everyone kind of moves all the way up. That requires us to play a bit of a high back line, and I don't necessarily know if he can do that. It helped that we were going against a team that basically did not have any pace in their attack at all in Mexico. I don't think that'll always be the situation. So I do worry a little bit about that. But at the same time, he's our best on the ball defender. And what I mean by like in possession defender, he's one of the few that can make the right passes. He has a good weight of pass on him. He'll look to to switch play if it's on and things like that. And he does have a good reading of the game. He just has to play with a little. He has to give himself a little space to handle attackers running at him, and because it's not just playing in a high line. One thing that when you're pressing side, you need to have your defenders to be aggressive and to what I mean by that is the best way to stop a team basically is to be really high up and to basically stop a pass, being able to reach its point, as opposed to allowing someone to get the ball, turn, and then run at you with momentum. And so uh, when again I'm going back to that Ghana game, that's when I saw Robinson and Chris Richards really aggressive, and they were basically cutting off the supply line at source. They were not allowing someone to receive the ball and turn on it and then kind of get a run at them. They were basically on their shoulder the entire time, and they're doing this in midfield. They're doing this really really high up. Tim Ream's not going to be able to do that. In that game versus Germany, couple of days before it was kind of the opposite. We were kind of his first instinct is to run backwards and to basically recover and receive ground. And again, versus better attacking teams, that hurts you. And so I think there's a reason why he's not been playing at Fulham. And Calvin Bassey is a more aggressive kind of center back, and I think you kind of need that, not just in the club game. I think you need that in the international game. And so I do have a slight fears about that. And I don't like saying that because Tim Ream has been one of the better stories. To be honest, he's been someone that I've actually. Uh, it's taken a while from me to be won over because I have been a skeptic for a long time, and he really was one of our better players in Qatar. To be honest, and I just think he'll be 38. I'm not against him being selected to be involved with the team, maybe to come on and be kind of a bench option. I am worried about him being given starts, and especially after this, because after the game, a lot of people were praising Tim Ream, and I'm not going to say he wasn't influential. He helped Richards actually in a lot of situations, but that is something that I could be a little nervy about. And then weirdly, I did feel like Tyler Adams was having a very poor first half. And before the goal happened, again, it just felt like we were something was off. It felt in possession. I felt like he was a decoy. He never looked like he was looking for the ball, to turn quickly, advance it, and it felt like he was scared or hesitant at times. Maybe he was like hiding. He was trying to hide behind a player instead of making himself available. And again, he hasn't played much football. Could be explained with rest. Totally understand about that. But I do think that was a little part of our struggles as well. He didn't him not making himself available made it harder for someone like a Richards or Ream when they had the ball. So and he didn't play in the second half, and Johnny Cardoza did, and I thought we moved the ball better in the second half. So the build-up seemed better. The attack felt more balanced too. We were able to get McKinney and Weah significantly more involved. Once you're able to, to advance past the first line of pressure, maybe you can get Des involved a little bit more, and Des can find McKinney and Weah. So there were a couple of things that were a little bit an annoyance in the first half, but we were able to fix them in the second. So one thing I can say is Greg's changes did work to improve us from the first half to the second half. We had less possession, but we had significantly more of a threat. And so, how pumped should we be or confident going into a cup round? And I'll hedge. I think Greg. I mentioned how Greg has like 9 lives, and maybe he will get these guys to put a few solid performances together. The 4-3 with the single pivot midfielder when he can't receive the ball is no bueno. Uh, Not having defenders confident on the ball either is also no bueno. Um, and it's one of those things where I don't think we still have a clue on what to do. Also, with the, uh, I think we have a gist of an idea, but we don't have we have an idea of what uh, what the lineup and formation should be, but I don't think we have the idea of personnel. And so, well, what is the idea really for the striker spot? Pepe shows up and saves Berhalter at key games time and time again, and he's never really rewarded with it. To be honest, Haji Wright started versus Mexico. I still think it's Balogun, and I think I already highlighted a little bit why, but I'll expand on it again. I think he has the most upside. I think he's the best at dropping the link play, but also has the pace and burst to make those runs upfield if needed. And I really like the few times when we have seen it. I love when him and Weah basically kind of switch roles. You'll see Weah making some runs to the middle. Balogun will go out wide. It's so much harder for teams to man mark. And the way that we play our fullbacks, high up, with Robinson, sometimes we give Dest a little bit of a free roll to kind of do whatever he wants. It's really hard to defend that, even versus quote unquote low block. And another thing that happens is he's not shy for the ball. Just we usually don't always look to play him in behind for some reason. And when you have someone like a Gio Reyna that's playing, I think that solves a lot of your issues. So that kind of gets you to the other thing. Gio Reyna has to play, and I think Balogun just missed Gio's play in the first half of that Jamaica game. So have Greg's tactics changed much? That has been kind of a thing that I was worried a little bit about going into after his rehire because we didn't see that in Qatar that much. And I do think we're relying on teams to turn over or to turn themselves over to get our best looks. But at the same time, I do think, and we still struggle to break teams down. That's still kind of an issue. So that's where someone like Arena can maybe be the locksmith to unlock something like that. And again, our build up can sometimes be off, but at the same time, I think we still haven't really gotten to a point where we've really had our main 11 that we would prefer. So I'm going to hold off a touch. And I think I've already hinted what it would be. It would be basically Pulisic, Anthony Robinson at left back. It probably I'd have to eat my words. It probably would be Tim Ream, and then maybe a Chris Richards, and then Dest, and then the midfield would be Musa. I guess it could be Adams, and then probably Gio. So that would be McKinney kind of being left out, and then Weah and Balogun as the other two. And I think the other thing too is if you're not going to try Gio in that kind of like 10 role, can you experiment a little bit with Pulisic? Now, we already seem to have Anthony Robinson basically being our left winger. He just has legs for days, so he can do that. Uh, and when you do have someone always keeping that width, that allows Pulisic to basically be a second number 10 anyways. And so I was wondering, maybe try him as a false nine. That could be maybe an idea. The other thing to think about is how are you going to fit Johnny Cardoza in? How are you going to fit Weston McKinney in? So again, I think we have the idea of what to do. We just don't necessarily have the personnel necessarily sorted because we have the attacking outlets at least on the wings with Pulisic and Weah basically sorted. We don't really have a lot of depth. Brendan Aronson is probably one of the few options. Maybe Malik Tillman and I guess Gio are kind of our tens. I think maybe Pulisic could actually be a 10 if we had to go in that kind of situation. Uh, Destin Robinson kind of our fullbacks, and then Adams, Johnny, and Musa kind of as our sixes slash eights, and then McKinney as well. So that seems to be the kind of the bulk of where we're at, and the question will now be just how can Berhalter get the most out of them, and that we still have to see. I'm not going to be the one that's going to hammer him if we don't necessarily win in Copa, but I am going to be upset if we don't at least show we're at least not just competitive, but we've shown that he's shown the ability to kind of change things. If we're really struggling in a first half, is he going to be able to make up for that? Uh, because in a couple of games in Qatar, we were not able to do that. We came into basically a 3-5-2 situation that gave up fits, every single time it was used against us with Netherlands, Iran, and Wales. And so, will that be an issue again? The way that we've been playing our fullbacks kind of high. We usually kind of isolate our center backs, and we don't really always have the best pace. If someone like Tim Ream is playing, uh, there's gonna be kind of things to think about there. We don't have to win Copa. I do want us to at least make a knockout round, have a bit of an interesting run. Um, I guess, reliant on who we draw. The group does feel like we can advance. I think we do have Colombia, but I think we also have, is it Bolivia? We have and we have a couple of, I think we have a CONCACAF team in there as well. So I think we have Uruguay. So Uruguay and Colombia is not necessarily great, but we'll have to see what we're able to do. And then with Mexico, Mexico is this was rough again. Henry Martin being played over Gimenez did not really make sense, and I don't necessarily feel that they can perform like this for their Copa. I think their fans are already stopping games with their stupid chant. It's probably time to maybe honestly ban the federation or go after them for money, because it is annoying how they're doing a chant that everyone knows they're not supposed to do, and not to be one of those uh, political rants or anything, but what all they're doing is they're being rewarded by being able to get the game canceled, because you're hurting the viewers, people that are viewing, that turning in, especially the game was late at night, and you're hurting people that are in attendance, and there's just no reason for that to you're basically rewarding their behavior essentially. The punishment of just suspending the game for a couple of minutes for them to just do the chant again isn't working, and so that needs to be necessarily addressed. But the fan base entirely is just it seems to be agitated, and I can see why. I don't follow the Mexican team that much, their roster. Uh, Apparently, a bunch of their players have moved into their domestic league. Someone like Diego Lainez is someone that doesn't get featured anymore. Henry Martin getting played over Gimenez is surprising. I mean, you have someone like Alvarez, who's playing very well in the EPL, but that seems to be their only kind of midfielder that seems to have an idea of what they're supposed to do. And this is a Mexico team that, at least, if not, maybe they didn't always have the most pace, but what they did have is they had an ability to kind of pass around us, and we've been able to basically match them technically over the years. We've caught up to them there, and we've always kind of had a little bit of a physical edge, and that has only just dramatically increased over the years. And so this is kind of a worrying time for Eltree. So we'll see if they're able to make things a little bit better in Copa. They were able to again win the Gold Cup last year. Everyone kind of goes into that with, maybe they're not their best roster, but we'll have to see. And then likewise for us, Copa is basically a pre tournament warm up kind of try run for them as well. They are able to host some games, and actually that could be it. If they do that stupid chant again, take away their ability to host World Cup games. That would be a way to kind of get that message across. I don't know. That maybe is going too far, but that is kind of where we're at for U.S. soccer. And I'm not going to necessarily do a ton of. I might not be able to actually cover the FA Cup. I do want to cover what happened in the Premier League. So Burnley and Brentford. This was not a game that I would have expected, because within just a few minutes, there's a PK awarded and a red card, because Sergio Reguilon just completely lost his head. And then I think it was 1-0 going into halftime. There were a couple moments actually when Brentford did have a chance to tie it. It was a crazy game. Fofana for Burnley was in and a couple of times, and he kept messing some chances. And there, Flecken did have to make some saves. And then there were a couple of times when Brentford were actually in on goal, it looked like, and they actually needed the Burnley keeper to make some saves. And that was kind of a big story coming into this. Actually, is Trafford was benched for this keeper Muric, and man, did that really man, was that a good move by company. It's taken him a while to do that. And you do feel a little bit for Trafford because it's not necessarily like he's necessarily been poor because there have been a couple of games when he's had to make like 10 saves. But there have also been moments when he doesn't always look sure of himself on defending, maybe a cross, maybe some set pieces. And he's the youngest keeper in the league. And uh, one thing that possibly sent Leeds down last year was just the reliance on Melier year after year, knowing that he was as young as he was as well. And so, they went with someone different, someone a little bit more, someone aged, older, not necessarily with more experience. I think it was his first start, but he had a good game. To be fair to him, and it was a good week for Burnley because not just that, Forest and Everton have those additional points deductions that was finally kind of made official, and so Burnley are not necessarily out of this still, and Everton still have both appeals underway, but Everton still have a case against them, and if they get hit again. Burnley are going to get back into this, so it's a really good time for them to get 3 points. It wasn't the easiest game. It wasn't the cleanest game in the world, even though they were playing down a man. But it doesn't matter. 3 points is 3 points, and they have been playing better in recent times. And they haven't. David Fofana hasn't always been the best for them, but at least what he has done is he's been making things happen. And finally, we finally saw a little end product. And so good for them. And for Brentford, this was a massive chance to really kind of given Burnley's recent form, to really kind of play themselves to safety. And they just but they didn't. They went against again Burnley were played well versus Bournemouth, didn't get anything out of that, and then they gave up a 2-goal lead to West Ham. And so, was it going to happen again? Because it nearly did. This was a very wild game because it was 2-0 in the second half. Brentford were playing down a man, and Thomas Frank made some pretty good subs, and they were able to bring on Brian and Bremo back. So that's just, if nothing else, that's just massive for Brentford to have him back as well. And, they were able to, that final, 15 minutes or so, it was, squeaky bun time for Burnley fans 'cause, Ajer was able to get one back in, to make it, 2-all or 2-1, and then there was controversy at the end. I think there was a shout for PK, I think, on a corner kick when someone was basically tackled down. I guess VAR looked at that and it wasn't a given. And then, really at the end, I have no idea how, it looks like Ivan Toney or someone is basically able to get the ball to go in past the keeper, and, I guess it's judged that Toney basically fouls the keeper. It's a 50-50 ball. I don't really think anyone's really fouling anyone. I think both have the right to go for the ball, and basically Tony's able to block the keeper from able to get it. I think it's kind of a cross just kind of sent in, and I think it should have counted. So just Brentford were really unlucky in that regard. But I mean, both basically ended with five shots on target, 9 shots by Brentford, 10 for Burnley, but 6 shots for Brentford and 3 on target came in the second half. This is when they were already down a man. So Frank made a couple changes, and man, did they really! Once it looked like they were dead, they looks like they were able to to come back and maybe you know, come away with maybe being unlucky that they weren't able to get something out of this. So they were the I think one thing you can maybe think about. Oh, another thing I didn't say is right before the second goal, Lewis Potter looks like he's in on goal completely, and I just he's basically caught in behind, or he doesn't really have the pace to be able to. He doesn't necessarily have the pace to be able to get basically get across the defender to be able to get someone on to get an effort on goal essentially to force a save. But because it looked and basically it proves costly because I think like 30 seconds after that they're able to Burnley's able to get that second goal. So I guess to get started with Burnley, after being left for dead, they're only 4 points from safety. and you with them Nottingham Forest news, and there's still maybe more points deductions that can maybe come from that too. And company made some changes and got the result he needed with being that keeper, that Murridge keeper, uh, and maybe got bailed out a little bit with the Tony call, but at the same time, major saves to keep Burnley from blowing this, and started early, where Burnley basically nearly passed it in his own net, in their own net. He also had a big 1v1 stop on Weissa and had to make a big save on Tony. And then David Fofana made a couple misses, but at the same time was able to put that aside and was able to get the game winner. And then a note I have here is Vitinha, because a lot of negative things have been said about Burnley's back line, but Vitinha has kind of been the one kind of player that looks like maybe an APL defender. And he had a massive, massive recovery run to stop Potter when it looked like Potter should have actually been the one. Basically getting Brentford back into the game with a tying score. So a lot of positives there, but at the same time, they nearly did the same thing. They nearly blew away a 2-goal lead just like they did versus West Ham. So at least there's something for company to still kind of think about. And then with Brentford, I do think there's some positives as far as there's some things that you can take away from here. So Frank took off Wiesa, Janelt, Jensen for Embremo, Malpai, and Batiste. The final 10 minutes really went aggressive with his changes, and it nearly was rewarded with it. Um, I think if nothing else, it felt like there was a pretty good response. I thought Batiste was offering some pretty good late crosses. Embremo was influential when he came on. You had to do this without Norgard. That's maybe the only negative. I thought Jensen handled the midfield okay, maybe as good as he could. But I mean, that definitely is a miss. And so the only thing is, it's kind of the same thing with Brentford. The back line isn't always the best. I do think the Fofana goal is bad from Zanka and Collins. Unfortunately for them, it's a nightmare start by Regulon, who unfortunately has been a very good player. He was one of the reasons why they were able to beat Chelsea, or at least tie Chelsea. And you're not going to have him now for a couple of these fixtures. And so the only thing now you can think of is they're going to be missing. It's gonna come down to Brentford have like 3 games. I think it's like Aston Villa. I think it's Man United, and it's Brighton, and then after that it's Luton, Sheffield, and Everton. So the 3 games that Regulon's gonna miss aren't gonna be the games that basically can become must-win games. But at the same time, uh, it, it's not gonna be easy to necessarily. It's one of your better left backs, at least that's been available. So are you able gonna? How are they going to be able to necessarily cope with that? And then if nothing else, you got Brian and Bremer back, which is going to be a massive boost no matter what. And then two, Panic is supposed to be somewhat close to being back, and so that'll be a massive bonus for them as well, because they've been missing Panic in every single game essentially. And so that is where we're at with Brentford and Burnley, and then with Nottingham and Forest, they go on. This game ends 1-1. First with Chris Wood. Chris Wood seems to like scoring against Nottingham or against Luton Town, and then Barry at the very end is kind of able to be the hero, and so the door is maybe open with Brentford maybe being able to unhandle Burnley. And this was a crazy fixture in the first time that these two teams met. Cooper's Forest had a 2-0 lead over Luton going in like the 83rd minute, and they threw away that game. And here they basically come out to Luton's able to basically steal 2 points basically from Nottingham Forest again. So they've stolen basically 4 points from Nottingham Forest, and if something happens where Luton stay up at Forest's expense or vice versa, you could look at those 2 moments, these 2 games, just by itself. And the main thing with Luton is, how do you came from dreamland to basically the most never-ending nightmare, where you're able to to get that tying goal versus Palace at the very end, and then you're basically winning 3-0 at your home ground versus Bournemouth, only to completely give up 4 goals in the next like 10 minutes in the second half. And the injuries were starting to show up, I thought, not only in the attack but also the back line. I thought that played a role a little bit versus Bournemouth. And there was no Anthony Semengo for Forest, but they did have Alanga. And the another thing that was showing up, at least for Luton Town, was there've been a couple games in a row that they've been missing Sambi Lokanga. I think that's been I think that's factored in a little bit too. That's not going to show up in necessarily any kind of stats, but at least Lukanga and Ross Barkley were starting to show a little something together. And now, someone like Impanzu that's been tried there, or maybe it hasn't been Barry. It's been someone else. It hasn't necessarily been like for like. So I think they've been missing a little bit with that. Obviously, they've been missing Adebayo in a bunch of these games. So this was this may be one of those where you couldn't lose, and I guess thankfully for Luton, they didn't. But they were not necessarily played their best. Five big chances for Forest. Forest got to basically come away kicking themselves. 16 shots, six on target. Luton's with .5 xG. Forest almost two. And again, it's one of those things where when you have a lead, can you keep the ball and see it out? And I think that's one of the things where when a team's not really good in possession, Forest had 214 passes, 71%. Luton had 357 and a higher pass accuracy. When you have a lead, especially a one goal lead, so a vulnerable lead, can you keep the ball a little bit and tire the legs out, and can you see it out? And Nottingham Forest were just not able to do that. And basically, what happens is I think Luton get a late corner kick, and basically they score on the corner kick. And so, I mean, there you go. Barry basically the hero. But basically, it seems no matter week to week, they're getting Rob Edwards is getting key contributions from key players, from bench players. And so here's just another one. So that feels fitting. And then Kaminsky with a lot of big stops, just to keep it 1-0. Wasn't really the best finishing versus Forest, but at the same time, it was big for him because he didn't probably have his best game with Bournemouth. And Doughty had to go on at halftime, some more injuries at the back line, and uh, I don't necessarily know if it's necessarily a positive or not, but there were two goal line clearances in the game as well, just to kind of keep them in it. So at least they were able to to get that kind of contribution as well. And Forest have to really be kicking themselves because it wasn't the best weekend for them. They drop points late here, and they also get hit with the points deductions. And there's another situation where Anthony Lenga is in on goal. He has to do better to when he's in the box. And I mean, Gibbs White at least was positive for them, but there were a couple of times when Lenga was in on goal and just not able to finish. And so it was interesting to see Hudson Odoi kind of rested, and then he came on off the bench for Origi. But I think it was surprising we didn't necessarily see Hudson Odoi start, and Ibrahim Sangare, who Nottingham Forest spent some money in the summer to bring him in from PSV Eindhoven, and he did not. He had a poor game. He was poor on the ball, and I don't understand why. One, Oriol Mangala was loaned out because he's getting starts for when he plays for Belgium internationally, and he's starting now for Lyon. So good enough for Lyon. And again, I don't really get why Gia Reyna can't get some game time versus that kind of setup. And so that's kind of where we are with them. And then Aston Villa and West Ham. This game also ends 1-1. First goal from Antonio. It looked like maybe Antonio was able to get a second one, but it was ruled out. And then Zaniolo in the second half after Unai Emery made some changes. And again, it's another one of those situations where Aston Villa just seemed to be helter-skelter week to week because given how they looked versus Tottenham just a week ago, it was almost kind of the flip. And I think the injuries a little bit are starting to show up. Morgan Rogers had to start this game. Digne was benched for Alex Moreno. John Duran got his start. John McGinn was suspended because of what happened versus Aston Villa. And they handled Ajax 4-0 in the second half in the midweek. But it looked like they lost Rockins to a bit of a scare, though he was able to start in this game. But they were struggling here, Aston Villa. Another thing, too, is you're missing Babaku Kamara. Now, that miss is showing up in basically every single game. And their back line isn't always the best either. It's another one, a situation where he's trying to play Clement Langley basically next to like Paul Torres. He's playing Imre Kanza kind of at the right back spot, and I think they're doing it to be kind of defensive minded first, but it hasn't really worked out anytime it's really tried. And funny enough, I think one of the kind of heroes of the game is Matty Cash, who came on in the second half. They moved Kanza back to center back, and Kanza basically had a block to stop West Ham from maybe getting a 2-goal lead. So sometimes Cash hasn't always been the best defensively. Maybe he sometimes goes way too high forward, and usually one thing Kamara was really good at doing was kind of taking over that spot. He's really good at doing spacing. So they're kind of missing that. So he's got to Emery's got to find a way to get other kind of contributions, and at least if nothing else, the changes that he made in the second half did work. So and that seems to be kind of a bit of a theme. I mean, Aston Villa was 70% of the ball, kind of what you expect. West Ham usually like having 30% of it. The XG was West Ham with 2, Aston Villa with point 0.6, 13 and 5 shots on target for both teams, and so again, it's one of those things where this could have been another Spurs mess because they were struggling to start, and so changes needed to happen, and they came. So again, Cash on, Konsa shifted to center back. Musa Diaby came on for John Duran, and Musa Diaby plays a big role in the goal. So I thought that was positive too. And Musa Diaby for his last 3 games started to finally come good for them. So that is important because they've needed some of that. They've been very reliant on Ollie Watkins, basically Leon Bailey, to kind of be their attack in every single game. And here, Musa Diaby was able to make a clever run and was able to have a nice touch and was able to play in. Zanello making a late run into the box, and he's able to put it away with a really nice finish. So Rogers was started, and the young 19-year-old wasn't really able to influence the game either, and so Zanello coming on for him was a good. Zanello scores. So that was a good change as well for Emery. And another thing too is not just missing John McGinn, not just missing Kamara, no Jacob Ramsey, who's been a bit of an option to kind of rotate, kind of an attacking kind of mounted player as well. And so we've seen some changes. We've seen basically Tillman's given a different role. We've seen John Duran finally played next to Ollie Watkins. So this is what Emery does. He's really good at just kind of changing things around. And again, just going forward, I would personally not play Longley. I would just play Paul Torres and Emery Konsa kind of together as that could be your center back pairing. Maybe when you get Diego Carlos back, you can try him in a back three. But I think they've been struggling with that. They've been struggling with finding a way to fit. One, they've been missing Paul Torres for a lot of this. They finally have him back, and now they're missing Barbecue Kamara, kind of the anchor in the midfield. And I think Douglas Luiz is struggling with that. John McGinn was asked to do a different role before he got his red card. So I think that's kind of the case with Aston Villa, and really unfortunate for them because again it was a chance for them with no one really playing. Could they basically take advantage a little bit over maybe Tottenham, and lo and behold, they kind of do because they at least get a point here. Because when I get to Tottenham, they don't. They had a bit of a shocker actually on the weekend, maybe the biggest shocker. Man United over Liverpool, I guess, would maybe be the other one, which I'm not going to argue. It was at Old Trafford, but that one is what it is. But then with West Ham, I think it was interesting to hear how they were able to press Aston Villa a little bit into some trouble in that first half. So it's been interesting to see that since David Moyes has brought Antonio back into the starting 11, I think this is actually their strongest. I think this is the strongest that the team can probably look at because you're playing Mo Kudus on the left, Jared Bowen through the on the right is a preferred role anyways, and then you're playing Lucas Paqueta kind of more in the central part of the kind of the cam role a little bit more, and it's come at the expense of James Ward-Prowse. That's kind of the only negative, but I think they offer a little bit more at least. Sorry, going forward, and not just that, it seemed like they were better pressing. Usually, it feels like West Ham don't always have an idea of how to play out of possession, but here they were able to force kind of the first goal while getting I think it's Rogers or Longley into some trouble, and that's basically where the goal comes from. It eventually comes off a throw in, but they get the throw in, but basically forcing the mistake to happen, and so. That's kind of where we're at with Aston Villa. And then I'll end with Fulham and Tottenham. And Fulham go on to win 3-0 with 2 goals from Muniz and then Sasa Lukic. And with Tottenham, it's kind of back to the drawing board. Great result and performance away at Aston Villa last week, but they lost Mickey Van de Ven in the process, and it looks like the season basically could be done for him. So that's not really good because here we saw, I think it's Dragosin, who was brought in. He was brought in on in the wintertime as kind of just kind of an emergency kind of sub. And so we'll see how good he is. And in this game, it wasn't ideal. Fulham basically targeted him. It seemed. Munez was able to get behind him with relatively ease. I thought Iwobi was able to kind of get the better of him as well. And basically, uh, uh, unfortunately for Tottenham, they went against probably Fulham's best 11. And one thing you could say about Marco Silva's side is when he's been able to field the 11 he wants, so Calvin Bassey and Tosin as the back line, Paulinho, William Iwobi, and basically a striker, whether Jimenez or Munez. This is basically what happened. Fulham have been good, and and unfortunately for us, Tim Reams maybe lost favor, but on the other side, Anthony Robinson has basically gotten more and more influential, and man, did he have some amazing delivery in this game to basically play in. I think he has a worldie of an assist for the first goal. He was just getting behind for fun. Uh, and basically, Tottenham were kind of hit a little bit with a brick saw. They didn't know what to expect here, uh, and basically they get the 3 goals, and then at the end it actually ends uh, relatively even, at least on XG, and it was 3 big chances to 4. Tottenham weren't able to necessarily at least get back into the game and make it somewhat interesting because after Fulham got the 3 goal lead, I think things kind of changed a little bit. Uh, I think a couple of the things that I noticed was, who does want the 4th spot because, Aston Villa was so poor last week. They were able to at least, get something with West Ham, and then, Spurs were amazing versus Aston Villa, but they did lose Van de Ven, and that kind of showed up. I thought in this game, though, it was maybe the worst I'd seen, Sarr play. Yeah, it seemed he was off his passing. I thought Madison had some poor giveaways. I thought Kulishevsky couldn't get open or get past Robinson. So, it was just kind of one of those things. They're missing Richarlison. Richarlison finally showed up a little bit in the second half, and he had a couple misses as well. Personally, I don't really know how to do it, but I think Brennan Johnson needs to be their starting right back. Sometimes he's played on the left. I mean, they're the right winger. Sometimes he's kind of played off the left. You're trying to do it because Son's kind of played through the middle. I think Brendan Johnson gives you a better opportunity to just kind of play it on the right side. And the only issue there is where do you fit in Kulishevsky at that point? 'Cause usually you have Madison or Kulishevsky kind of in between. And in some of these situations, you're actually seeing the change to play Kulishevsky in midfield. And I think we saw it again here. So the only thing is because Kulishevsky is so good on the ball, but and the only thing about this is out of possession, basically the some of the two best defensive minded midfielders all year had been on Tottenham, and it's been Basuma and Sarr. So it was just kind of a one off that Sarr just had a really poor game. But I thought that was happening. I thought Fulham were doing a really good job to kind of get Sarr to chase, and then we were able to get their fullback or someone like a Wobie to get in behind him with a couple clever 1-2s. And that was happening over and over again as well. And I think it really is a story of Fulham, not necessarily Spurs here. Marco Silva has a good side. He's just not able to always kind of feature it, unfortunately for them. It just felt like they understood how to basically go after Spurs' strength, which is the way that they play their fullbacks. And so there's so many times when Spurs would have 2v1s down both flanks, when Fulham would win the ball back, and then Spurs with some sloppy mistakes in possession allowed Fulham to basically break upfield in numbers, and the runs and movement between with Robinson and William, Iwobi, and Castagna, I thought gave Spurs fits all game. And again, Sarr was just getting played out of position. Spurs weren't really getting help from Kulishevsky or Brendan Johnson. Both were just kind of passing their runners onto others upfield. So I thought that was just a mess. And the only thing too is uh, they were attacking the wings to open up the middle. So again, I haven't seen Sarr and Basuma stretched like this in a long time, where they didn't know where to go, and they were getting drawn to follow a man kind of running down the wing, and then when it was open, no one was following the space that they were leaving in the middle of the field, and so usually someone like Pereira would just all of a sudden pop up. or someone else. Like Munez is really good at just kind of just dropping into midfield as well. And Munez is quite a player. He's everything's kind of falling into place a little bit for him because not only is has he kind of been able to join the squad. I think he had a couple of injuries early on, but he's been able to basically get back into the lineup when he's got basically the core players, with him. So they are able to supply him with some really good service, and he's been a gem of a striker. Really, and I think it's a surprise even Fulham because they went out of their way to try to get Amanda Broja to come on loan, and they're paying a couple million to Chelsea just to have Broja sit on the bench for them. And, Munoz is just it's not just physical presence in the box with the crosses. He makes good runs. He has the ability to finish in multiple ways. He can drop and link a play. We've seen that, and I think the only maybe negative was to get that second goal that he got. He suffered a bit of a bruise, so maybe the international break will give him some time to recover. If not, you do have Jimenez before he got suspended was playing well for them for Fulham as well. So because he had that purple patch, and then he things didn't necessarily work out for him. So if Munez can't go, I guess maybe the idea would be either Broja or William again. And you already mentioned kind of Anthony Robinson, and just again without the USA blindfold on. I think this is Andy Robinson back when he was 25. I think America has a player that's playing at elite level at his position right now in Europe, and it's not necessarily Pulisic or Musa at Milan or Gio Reyna or keeper. I think it's Robinson. And frankly, both fullbacks for them have been great with Castagna getting his flowers in this game as well too. Really good recruitment to pick him from Leicester. And the only thing to add with Fulham is this: Alex Iwobi is I don't really understand why Everton gave this guy away. And he used to have a lot of stick online because Everton overpaid, quote unquote, Arsenal 40 million for him a few years back. Looking back, that number doesn't seem that bad. You know, I think 40 million for a midfielder that's able to do what he does. He doesn't really have a weakness. He's a very progressive minded midfielder as well. He runs for days. And he's been outstanding for Fulham, and I think his best position is on the right, like we've seen. But he could do a job on the left as well, like we saw versus Man United. He actually won the game for Fulham versus Man United, and he can do a deeper kind of pivot role as well. And he seems to understand where he wants to go with the ball, and he's a great forward-minded passer. And Fulham are enjoying him as well. There are a couple of games where he missed because of African Cup of Nations, and he's returned back to the side as well. And so that's kind of where we're at with the EPL review. I'll maybe dive a little bit into the Man United and Liverpool game for the when we get to the episode next week. I'm still a little salty about that. One thing I will say is Eric Ten Hag deserves his flowers because he went bold. It could have completely worked out against them, but he at least went bold with his subs. I think they ended the game basically not really playing defenders. I think Bruno was kind of their center back, and it was one of those situations where he intentionally made the game open and end to end, and basically it was almost like a dare. Liverpool either going to blow us away, winning like 7-0, or as many times as they're going to get their looks, we're going to get looks as well because it was that open and end to end of a game. And basically, he got rewarded with that because Liverpool were not able to make those 1v1s count. And I think it also looks like Liverpool looked leggy as the game kind of went on. Liverpool had played a lot of games since the turn of the calendar year. Man United have not, and I think that was kind of showing up a little bit as well. And yeah, I think it's one of those things where it was big. It was big for Ten Hag to get that kind of victory. I didn't necessarily think they were. I mean, it definitely could have gone wrong. To be fair, but at least it's nothing to build off of. I mean, when I saw the lineup, Harry Maguire coming on, uh, Bruno playing kind of the free role that he normally plays. Liverpool get the second goal because they were able to get Bruno off the ball, and Bruno sulking, looking for a foul, and Liverpool able to get the second goal. I just thought that was going to be a little bit more of how the game would go. And another thing too was Kobe Mano was spectacular, but at the same time, he's only just one kind of player. And I thought Liverpool were able to turn Man United over. And again, it was just they had fun, against Man United's backline in retreat, and they just were not able to make the right decisions count at the very end. And when Man United were able to get their moments, now Man United also had the same kind of situation. It felt like Rashford could have scored 4 goals this game, and it took a while for him to finally get his shooting boots. But he was a threat all game. It was probably the most. It looked like he was the most confident he had been in a really long time. Garnacho was very good in his own right as well, when Liverpool were struggling with him. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those situations. And so Man United are able to advance, and they have a moment in Wembley. And I don't know who they've drawn. It might be it could be City, it could be Chelsea, and or it could be it could be Coventry. So Man United have a chance, depending on who they drew, to make a to make another FA final, and that would be something too. Given how Man United's season has been all year, if they were able to actually win a trophy, lo and behold, and they are starting to get a little healthy again. We saw Mason Mount come on this game, so yeah, there are a couple of. It's not all necessarily doom and gloom. That said, they still. It's very interesting how they went into this game without Casemiro. I was surprised by that. Kobe Mano played well. He felt like he was playing midfield all by himself, but he did do a job, and he got the better of Endo in a couple of these situations. So, uh, yeah, it was one of those things I was not really expecting it, and it's not the end of the world because the FA Cup, you still have to get to a semifinal and still before you can get to a final. It wasn't really the biggest trophy on something that I was rooting for. That said, it was a wake up call, and not having Jota, how many times is that going to show up? Is Darwin Núñez going to be able to make better decisions? How is Salah going to be on a minutes restriction all season, the rest of the way? Is someone gonna be able to make their chances? If not, Luis Diaz does all this good stuff, but he's not always the best when it comes to making decisions or uh, being a finisher either. And Cody Gakpo, I keep wanting to like this guy, and at the same time, I don't really know what he offers, and he's going to need to kind of step it up as well. I really want him to be played a little bit more on the left. Maybe those times when maybe Luis Diaz is kind of getting luggy. Maybe try Gakpo instead of necessarily a Nunez on the left. Uh, I'd like to maybe kind of see that, and if nothing else, maybe Jaden Dance. Jaden Dance wasn't able to go here. Maybe going forward, that could kind of be the idea. It feels like he has more of an idea of uh, more of composure a little bit in the when he's in the box essentially. Now I've only seen him for a couple of games, but at least the kind of way that he's been able to finish, he's won me over. So I don't know. We'll have to see if it's only a one off. Obviously, that will be that bad. The only thing I'm kind of freaking out a little bit is just the. It's not the first time that they've thrown away a game where they had so many breakaway chances and weren't able to necessarily finish them, and it's just is that going to show up in a league game? Is that going to show up for Brighton that they play on the weekend? It did the first time they met them. That game will be at Anfield at least. Is it going to show up at Old Trafford? They've still got to play them at the league. So is that could be? I don't necessarily think if Ten Hag good tries this at Old Trafford, if he goes with the same kind of matchup plan, I don't think it'll necessarily work. But at the same time, 2 times that they played, he's played Klopp. He's gotten a draw and he's gotten a win over him. So and yeah, even if it had gone to PKs, I don't necessarily think I was confident going into there, and I didn't feel like it deserved a PKs, given how many times that Man United were really in on goal. It was a crazy game. I think both teams had 20 plus shots each, uh, and Man United really did dominate. I thought in extra time, even though Liverpool had the early goal lead after that. So it is what it is, and so that's kind of where we're at. And so I'll be back next week, normal time, I think. I will be enjoying Easter actually up with the family, but kind of up north, so it'll take a little while. I'll probably be able to do a show on Wednesday, not necessarily Tuesday, but I'll try to get something out. And it's a big one. It's a big one with Arsenal and Man City, and not only is it big for obvious reasons in the title race and with the Arteta Pop, Arteta Pep, things like that. Uh, coming into this, who is going to be the most healthy? Arsenal have Martinelli that looked to be leggy. I don't think Arteta enjoyed Declan Rice playing for England in both friendlies, which didn't really need to necessarily happen. Saka was able to play for England. I don't necessarily know if he's necessarily nursing something. We'll see about him. That could be an issue, obviously, to say the least. And with Man City lost Kyle Walker. It looks like they lost John Stones with this international break window. So, what is Pep going to do? I guess he's going to rely on maybe Ruben Diaz and maybe Akanji and either Ake or maybe Gvardiol. That's kind of another thing too. Man City were able to beat Newcastle, and it's probably the easiest of a game that they played in a very long time. Newcastle were not good. Erling Haaland had actually had a number of chances to make that number a little bit worse. Both goals, I think, were Bernardo Silva, like kind of deflection goals. But Gvardiol played, and I thought he offered them a little bit better width, a little bit as a fullback. So it'll be interesting to see if we actually see him because we really haven't in a lot of these games. So that's kind of that's what we have. Looking forward to us. Really the arguably the game of the season. Yeah, everyone. I'd like to say it was Liverpool and City. This one carries just as much weight, if not more. And so we'll be back to talk about that and what happens and talk about what happened elsewhere in the league. Back to normal a normal schedule. We'll say. And until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.